and welcome to our virtual community learning exchange on how to run your own community learning exchange. My name is Ailsa Higgins. I work at Inspiralba and I'm the Rural Social Enterprise Coordinator, which includes coordinating the Rural SEN and these virtual learning sessions that we host. So first of all, what is a learning exchange? A community learning exchange is basically where one community or organisation will take a journey to another community. It can be a community of interest, a geographical community, or a similar organisation to learn from what they're doing, to learn from their successes and their mistakes as well, the overall experience that they've had or that they've shared. So prior to the COVID pandemic, the learning exchanges were purely a face-to-face activity where people would maybe travel from Orkney down to Murray or to the borders even further to learn from other communities or organisations. This could be a reuse organisation that wants to learn from an organisation doing a similar thing, or it could be a community forest that wants to go to another community forest to see what they might be doing differently and what they could kind of learn from that. But obviously, as we all moved online with COVID, so did the learning exchanges. So we're just here to share what we have learned and gathered from hosting these virtually over the last year. So this is back in 2019, face-to-face, and we had a community learning exchange down to the borders. This is kind of important. As you can see, there are 4 social enterprises that we've listed below. And this is a kind of key learning point for rural social enterprises that are hoping to do a virtual learning exchange that would be in person, which is just about making the best use of your time. If you, like me, are facing a 4.5-hour drive out from Campbelltown to visit somewhere else, then it makes sense to combine as many visits as you can or as many as you like into that one visit, so that you're not just going to see one organisation and then going the whole way home again. You might just cram everything that you can into that trip just to make it the best kind of value of your time and of money as well. In terms of funding your exchange, the Scottish Community Alliance run this community learning exchange programme, which is funded by the government. Applications go through them, and you can find out more at that link at the bottom of the screen there, or just going onto their website. They now fund both virtual and in-person learning exchanges, but prior to COVID, it was only in-person ones. So a lot more flexibility with the virtual exchanges, and we've generally found as hosts and with guest speakers that these rates are really agreeable, and it will give you plenty time to plan, prepare, put your PowerPoint together, host a session, and then do follow-up. So more information can be found there. And coming on to the benefits of virtual, I really can't say more about this, but in terms of the savings of cost and time, you know, if you have the morning and you have a couple of hours before you know you're going into other meetings, or you've identified that, you know, you might take next Friday or next Monday for a bit of reflection and personal learning, then, you know, there's nothing better than finding a session that is running for an hour and a half. You can access it online and it looks to be really interactive and engaging, but you don't need to leave the comfort of your own armchair or swivel chair, which is obviously beneficial in remote, rural and island context. What you'll probably find is that this just opens up your session to such of a more wide range of participation. With people working from home, you've got to consider elements like childcare, travel, all of these different things, and also bearing in mind that there's places in the country where it's going to take someone 2 ferries, a boat, a train and a plane to actually get somewhere where that would be considered central enough for a learning exchange or other session to go on. So virtual is really very good for accessibility. One of the other bonuses is obviously you're reducing your carbon footprint, but also that all this learning, like just now, can be recorded. So this will eventually be made into a video that will sit online, and folk that either attended the session or didn't can access that afterwards just to recap on what they learned. And you can also follow up, make a blog out of it, make a podcast, turn it into a wee short report case study that folk can flick through in a couple of pages and share it more widely. Pop it on your Twitter, pop it wherever you want, But if you've recorded something, if you've got some pictures, a video, a short audio file, get it online where people can access it and get the learning from it. So in terms of themes, you might be sitting here just now thinking, yes, I know exactly what I want to deliver it on. If you're Peter, maybe it's about greenhouse management. We don't know. So yeah, these are a few of the themes on the right-hand side here that we've delivered on. So the first few that we did, which went down to the borders and up to Oban, they were on a couple of different ones, like I mentioned. There was involving young people, there was reuse and repair. But then as we kind of went online, really, and it seems like a lifetime ago, but I'm sure you remember, it was all about COVID response and recovery. What grants are you applying for? How are you adapting what you're doing so it's COVID safe? What are you doing with your staff, with your volunteers? So that's what all that was about. And I think we did about 3 learning exchanges on COVID response and recovery. And they were on different things. There was one about managing staff and volunteers. There was one about the digital inclusion aspect on it. And we also had a learning exchange on virtual fundraising in a small rural place where a cake sale or that type of thing usually works much better. So you might know already, like, this is the information that I want to share, or you might just be thinking, yeah, I would love to have a virtual learning exchange and just meet different people who are interested in the same thing. So it's okay to just kind of do a, here we are, this is what we do, sort of learning exchange as well. It doesn't need to be one particular bit of information. So yes, and just as well, if anyone's got any questions, feel free to just pop your hand up, virtual or otherwise, and jump in. So in terms of your audience, if you do have a specific theme, and we'll say that is catering, it might be really obvious who you're going to invite. If you don't, it can be a bit more difficult to pin down. So for the likes of this learning exchange, Jane had said, yep, there are a couple of people interested, so we're able to email them, but then you just kind of have to think, right, there must be other people that would be interested to come. How is it we're going to reach out to them? So we had a mailing list for the Rural Sen anyway. We had sent out the information through Senscott's bulletin that goes out monthly as well. It went out on Twitter, which was good to see that a couple of people did actually read it from Twitter. And we find that that's quite useful. Putting things out on Twitter and not doing anything with it is kind of counterproductive. But what we do quite a lot of the time is the tweet goes up and then you think, okay, who would like to retweet this that also has bigger networks? So that would maybe be Senscott, Social Enterprise Academy, Social Enterprise Scotland, different people. And if you're not sure, oh, would they retweet this? Do they want to be tagged? Just send them a message before and say, hi, Az, all right if I tag you in this tweet, and could you share it with your wider network? So that's worked quite well for us, just checking that they're happy to be involved and to share. And noting as well that mailing lists of recent seem to be a bit of a bourrach for many people, given that the spam filters in folks' emails seem to be just ratcheting up several notches. So what we've found is that Mail Merge has been working quite well, and that's a free tool with Outlook that just allows you to send an email from a big Excel list of people, and that's free as well. So if you want any more information on that, please ask Malcolm. I have no idea how it works, but he knows how to do it.
It's actually quite cool. I wouldn't be too worried. It took me a few turns, but I did get there eventually. While you've got you, Ilse, we've got a wee question from Hannah. Like to jump, Hannah, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, thanks. Sorry, it was kind of the previous slide, so I'm jumping back just for a second. It was more about, or actually no, 2 previous slides. Sorry, never mind. It doesn't have to be on the slide. It was just wondering about, so if you're doing it virtually, who is there to kind of manage the screen, as it were? Is there someone who's kind of, is it a nicer camera or is it just on a phone? How is it managed for like the live exchange?
Do you mean in terms of like managing the Zoom call, so that like what Malcolm's kind of doing?
Yeah, well, and making sure that if the exchange is like showing a place, how, or is it pre-recorded? Is that
right? Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, we have previously done it so that it's pre-recorded. For the likes of, I'll come back to aisle 20 so many times just because it was a great example. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I'm sure a couple of people will be, but it's an online shop front for goods that come from small island producers. Tidy Tea is one of them. But basically, we had Rhoda come on to talk about e-commerce and how she kind of got into that and the lessons she'd learned and what she did beforehand, and what a couple of our other exchanges did was made a short video. I think we said no longer than 5 minutes, because I'm sure you'll know the average kind of, interest span kind of deteriorates after that. So a short video, maybe 3 to 5 minutes on who we are and where we are, is really important. So the pictures and the videos for that in the pre-recording, we want to know, where are you? Where are you sitting? What's it like? What's it like on a map? What's some pictures? So she had recorded some short clips out of her back garden on the croft in Tyree, which was great because it gives you immediately like such a sense of place. Had recorded, I think it's her grandfather's house that she'd moved into, so a wee bit of the history on where she was and how she got there. So in terms of the quality control, I think maybe a week before the exchange, I just said, can you send that over? I'll just have a wee look at it. And then when it came to sharing that on the Zoom screen, I had that sitting good to go. And then you just do your share screen with the video and audio enabled. So that's how we manage that. In terms of anyone coming on as a guest speaker, what I have done recently, which sometimes feels a bit overkill, but putting together a very short wee manual that just says, here's the itinerary, here's who's going to be involved, Ailsa Higgins phone number, Malcolm Alloway phone number, just in case you need to get in contact, and then a wee initial for who's doing what next to the itinerary, just so folk know. And then at the bottom, you can leave them a wee blank box in case they want to put in their social media information or resources that they want to be shared and that sort of thing. And then in terms of the physical running of the event, we found that it's really good to have at least a couple of people, so that it's not someone trying to do all the talking and all the Zoom technical bits as well. Is that an okay? Yeah, okay. So yeah, identifying your audience, it might be easy. It's always good to think outside the box. Even if you think you've invited everyone, it might just be worth popping it up on Twitter, or sending it over to someone with a mailing list or newsletter, just so that folk that might not otherwise hear about it can do so. So digital inclusion is quite a big one. Thinking about, are you only using social media? Are there folk that might actually prefer to learn about the event through email, through a phone call? Could be a colleague, friend of a friend, written invitation. And then also, are there anyone that's going to require assistance to access the event? Are you going to have to buy someone a phone, put some money on it, show them how Zoom works? Is it going to be that they need a Zoom guide sent to them? That sort of thing. So just thinking about that, be aware of it. I think most people know how to use Zoom these days, but just not taken for granted that everyone does. And then this is the last point I would say is the most important. It can be fine if you have a couple of people managing the event overall and involved in the running of it, but it's really good to have one central point of contact that everyone just knows, okay, this is who I'm going to, and they keep an eye on who's signed up, have we sent the Zoom link out, all that sort of stuff. So moving swiftly on, has anyone used Eventbrite before? Yeah, a couple of people. It's really self-explanatory. This is a picture of our digital engagement one that we did back in March. And I think I actually have a couple of annotations on here. So this is what your Eventbrite page would look like. And this is basically just the shop front for, you've got a really good event coming up and people should come to it. So it will give you the title, show you who's hosting it. The date and time will be down here, and folk can add that onto their calendar as well. And your event blurb. So that's really the thing. I mean, you can have lovely graphics as we've, carefully designed here and put up. You can have a catchy title, but the thing folk are immediately going to scroll down and read is the event blurb. So what is it and why do they want to go? So generally this would consist of, we would like to invite you to, who's speaking, what's the topic, a bit more information about the learning exchange, because I think we've had a couple of people before when we were quite new to writing event blurbs, hiya, what's actually going to be involved in this? What do I need to bring? Is there going to be breakout rooms? How's it going to work? And so it is actually easier if you just provide that in the event information, and it saves people having to get in touch with those questions. So for us, we've noted as well that the event is sponsored by Scottish Community Alliance, maybe a wee bit more background information. And I think the key hook for folk is, like, they've read all that information, it sounds great. What are they going to learn or take away from the session? So for you guys, for this session, I think it was, you'll be able to host your own learning exchange, and that would be the final outcome. And then, of course, whoever's poor colleague is getting the email put below for more information. That's important as well, so that they've got a personal contact that they can get in touch with for more info. And I think the more you do these, you kind of then just get a bit of a formula for it in your head. It's okay if you're not an event manager or you've never done an event online. I'm sure you'll be able to put one together and just make it sound as inviting as possible. So that's really the whole thing on event blurbs. We do have a lot of examples, I think, from previous ones. So if that's something anyone was interested in, then I can certainly give a wee bit more info on that. So this is the overall structure of the Learn Exchange. You'll actually see that this is kind of what we've gone through here, and what we'll be going through. I have put arrows in here. They're quite small, but they're going left to right along the colour. So a bit of an intro, housekeeping, when are you going to get your tea break? I think that's important after, I think everyone's just getting a bit of Zoom fatigue these days, so it's nice to know when you can kind of turn your camera off and go and get a cup of tea. And quite often, as we've done kind of different topics, things like digital engagement, you can get some random people coming along, and quite often it's folk that don't know each other. So it can be quite fun just to do a bit of an icebreaker. What have you had for breakfast that morning? A cinnamon and raisin bagel, you know, just a bit of a light-hearted thing to get people thinking, and pass on to someone else. I've heard of some Zoom sessions that do a wee 5-minute mindfulness. Don't know if everyone's into that, but you can get creative with it. And I think really the more like outgoing and fun it is, folk are going to remember it and think, actually, it was a bit wacky, but it was really good, and it was totally different than what I'm used to. So just be bold with that, I think. So speaker gives presentation. You're kind of wanting to get into the meat of the Learn Exchange right away so that you've got people hooked, and then, okay, I'm thinking about that, questions are starting to come in, and then you would end the presentation and open up to a group discussion or Q&A, whatever you want to call it. I think after that, quick stretch of the legs, that can be however long you want it to. And then after the break, we will split into breakout rooms for a bit of a deeper discussion. In terms of numbers, I feel like everyone has their own idea of what's best for breakout rooms. You can have 6, you can have 3, you can have 2, whatever you want. It probably depends on the numbers that have signed up on the day. I think we had about 10 people sign up for this exchange. There's maybe about 8 or 9 of us here, so we'll go into 2 breakout rooms. But if 12 people had signed up and we ended up with 13 people, we'd go into 3 breakout rooms. The other thing, if you are managing breakout rooms, is to just think about who you're putting in which one. It's always quite useful to have, if you've got 3 members of staff on the call, one of them into each breakout room, just so that they can carry in the questions with them, maybe record what's going on so they can feed back to the group, and just like generally give prompts for the conversation and discussion. So that's quite good to do, just to make sure you've got enough people to facilitate that. And the presentations, it's key. I know I don't have too many pictures in here. I think they were all at the beginning. But if someone is given an overview on, I work at Inspiralba, it's based here in Campbelltown, get a picture of it, show them what it's like, who all works there, what are the staff like, as many pictures and videos as you can, just to keep it really interesting. And this is just what I'm talking about, showing information. So we have had, I think, a couple of podcasts. We've made some really good case studies, which are on YouTube as videos or as PDFs, which I think I've linked later on. But yeah, showing information is the main way. It's a story you're telling, isn't it, really? At the end of the day, it's not just a presentation of a PowerPoint with lots of words on it. If somebody's coming on to share their information, and remembering that typically in the physical community learning exchanges, somebody is getting in a car, driving to somewhere, getting a tour of the place, getting a cup of tea, getting to chat to folk. So if you keep that in the back of your head burning away, that's as much as what you're wanting to kind of replicate through virtual as you can, which is why the tea break is also so important, I think. So yeah, just making sure that you're really getting across like the sense of place and people as much as you can. It is difficult virtually, but it's very important. So this is a bit of a wordy slide, but in terms of prompting discussion, sometimes you can be in a breakout room and it can just totally dry up and no one wants to say anything and it's really awkward. Don't panic if that is the case. Do not panic at all. If folk have registered for your event and they've sat through the presentation and they haven't put an excuse in the chat and left, they want to be there. They do want to be there. They've got an interest in the topic, and it might just be that they're not quite sure what they want to say, how to say it, or who's in the breakout room. So immediately, we've done introductions at the start, but as soon as you get into your breakout rooms, a bit of a recap. Who are you? Where do you work again? Where are you from? Right, okay, I know you a bit better. I can now kind of talk in front of you and I don't feel a bit like a lemon. So if I'm posing questions in the chat, and we'll say it's on involving young people and social enterprises that do that, what does your organisation already do? And have you got any ideas that are burning away in the back of your mind that have encouraged you to sign up for this session? Sometimes you ask it and there's just silence and you could hear a pin drop. It's awkward, but see if you just stay quiet, someone will unmute and they will answer. So it's not the end of the world. And just by leaving a bit of a gap, you're giving somebody the option to fill it, because one of the worst things you can do is ask a question, leave a tiny gap and then jump right in because you think no one's going to answer. They will, they just need a bit of time. They might be trying to find the unmute button as well. You need to remember that if it's virtual. If your questions just seem to be the problem, you can just put it out more broadly and say, does anybody have any ideas or topics they want to discuss? Is anyone wanting to go into a breakout room with anyone in here and have a bit more one-on-one discussion? And you can also do annotation as well on Zoom, which is up at the top, and it means folk can draw all over the screen. We've used that with kind of younger folk who are quite often a wee bit shy on Zoom. Not like all us hardened Zoom users, but some people quite like just doing a bit of writing on it. If you've got a kind of maybe a graph or a gradient and they can kind of say like where they feel they are on that, put some stamps down, and that's really fun as well, because folk love to draw things on your board. So just think about all the tools you have. You've got breakout rooms, you've got annotation things, you've got the option to just fling it out there to people. So yes, that would be my tips for prompting discussion. In terms of collecting feedback, this is quite important, because if you are doing a learning exchange through SCA, they'll ask you for a bit of feedback on how the event went, and it's good to get that firsthand of the people that were actually there. So these are some of the questions that we've used. We do sometimes use this on SurveyMonkey, so we've done it two different ways. At the end of a session, after it's finished, we've sent out an email to people with some of the resources like videos and stuff that were highlighted during the session and said, hello, thank you for coming. Here's the resources that we were speaking about, and also could you fill in this survey for us? The only thing with that is that sometimes folk go, I'll do it later, and they don't, and it doesn't get done later, so you don't get your feedback. The good thing about SurveyMonkey is that you can put open questions, so if folk have any comments like, what do you want to see more of or less of, they can write about it. Whereas if you do a poll on Zoom, which is a feature in the kind of Zoom room that Malcolm will be able to see as he's the tech host, you can get them to do it in the room while they're there and you're guaranteed to get feedback. But the only thing with that is that it's yes or no or a multiple choice, so folk can't tippity tap and give you a longer answer. So depends on the kind of feedback you're wanting, but both are good tools to use. You could also just ask people verbally for feedback and record it that way, or get a wee screenshot with everyone giving thumbs up. You can be pretty creative about it. But I think it's always good to gather the feedback, because the first few learning exchanges we did, we didn't have any breakout rooms, and in the feedback it was really strongly highlighted that folk wanted a bit of a chance to kind of go into a deeper discussion with folk in smaller groups, and so that was when we brought the breakout rooms in. It seems really obvious that you would do that now, but we didn't know that until we asked people what would actually be better for you. So that's collecting feedback. Here are some of the lovely colour coordinated resources that we've made from the previous learning exchanges. So this one focuses on Bubara, which is the community shop on the island of Barra. And in this little PDF case study, what we covered was just where they are, what they do, the highlights and positives that came out of their learning, the issues that they highlighted for future action, and then the key learning points out of the whole session. So basically their advice and recommendations to others. And that was just quite handy to kind of send out to everyone afterwards. Here was a recap on what you learned, or if you weren't there, here's the recording of the presentation, and here's a case study as well.